Welcome everybody to the third episode of Boudica, Flame of the Iceni. This episode is Secrets. Thank you for joining us again today. We really do appreciate it. I'm going to introduce the cast very quickly in a moment, but I just wanted to say a big thank you for following us so far, and a big thank you to everybody who's been involved, because it's I really appreciate that it's it is a big ask to ask all this time of everybody to come on board and be reading over the scripts, learning them, jumping on board each week. So thank you to all of you as well. So to start with, I do need to say again that this week there is some strong language and some scenes of violence and scenes that people might find disturbing. So just to be aware in advance. Obviously, those scenes aren't taking place, but they are read and expressed. So just to make you aware of that. I'd like to pass over to Jane to start us off introducing everybody whose characters who's going to be performing this week. So yeah, Jane Hamlet, please.
Hi, I'm Jane Hamlet. I play Queen Boudica, and it is my very great pleasure and honour to introduce David.
Hello, I'm David and I'm playing Prasutagus, and I'd like to hand over to Harley.
Hi, my name's Harley. I'll be playing Paulinus, Scott, and Athanasios today, and I shall hand over to Amy.
So I'm Amy, and tonight I will be reading Maelo and Decarius, and I'd like to hand you over to Charlotte.
Hi, I'm Charlotte. I'm going to be playing Sabina again tonight. I would like to introduce Emily.
Hi, I'm Emily. I will be narrating today, and I would like to pass you over to Becky.
I'm Becky, and I'll be reading the character of Bramwyn today, and I would like to hand you over to Curtis.
Decarius, and I will hand you over to Elric.
Hello, I'm Elric. I'm one of the narrators this evening. I shall also be playing the part of Calaminus, and I would like to pass you over to Kylie.
Hello, I'm Kylie, and I'll be playing Catus Decianus, and I will also be playing Tyro. I'd like to hand you over to who hasn't gone yet.
Alice.
Alice, you haven't gone yet. Alice, go.
Hi, I'm Alice, and I will be narrating this evening, and I suppose I'll introduce you to Laura.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Laura. I'm going to be playing Bronwyn this evening, and I will introduce you to Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm going to be playing Jodak this evening, and I'd like to introduce you to Sean if he hasn't gone already.
Hi, I'm Sean, and I will be playing Agro, and I'm Laura.
Thank you. So that's everybody covered, isn't it? Yep. Excellent. Actually, as well, just before we kick off, can I just hand us back to David for 1 second to maybe say a little hello, if that's okay?
Hello, this is a message for Betty in Vancouver. And thanks for getting up so early in the morning and tuning in. And I hope you enjoy it. And nice to meet you. Alice told me you'd be watching us, so really appreciate it. And and thanks for watching. Lots of love.
Thank you. Thanks, David. Thank you for that, David. I'm sure it would be very appreciated. So without further ado, should we make a start? We'll start with you then, please, Elric. Thank you.
Boudica, Flame of the Iceni, Episode 3, Secrets, by Laura J. Harris. Interior, Royal Roundhouse, Icenium, before dawn. In her bed, in her family's home, Bronwyn stirs restlessly in her sleep. Cut 2.
Exterior, the fighting circles, previous evening. Bronwyn is borne on the shoulders of several warriors. Plenty more surround her, chanting and singing her name. She is delighted and enjoying the attention following her win over Agro, who simply watches as she is taken away. Standing in the wooden palisade, Sabina also watches Aronwin. She does her best to hide the mixture of distaste and admiration she feels for the Iceni princess. Aronwin looks in her direction. Their eyes meet. Aronwin raises her chin as if to say, "What did I tell you?" Sabina folds her arm across her chest, but cannot help concede a smile. Cut 2.
Interior, Royal Roundhouse, Icenium, as before. Aronwin stirs in bed, still lost in her dreams. Cut 2.
Exterior, the fighting circles, previous evening as before. Celebration, drink, dance, fire and night. A number of warriors, male and female, gather around Aronwin. We witness several rounds of rapid-fire drinking before Aronwin takes her leave. She begins to make her way back toward the town. Agro watches Aronwin over his cup of ale before following her at a distance. Cut 2.
Interior, Royal Roundhouse, Icenium, as before. Close-up. Aronwin's eyes dart back and forth beneath closed lids as she continues to dream. Cut 2.
Exterior, near the Great Hall, previous evening. Merla moves through the streets carrying out her duties. Intercut with.
By the wall of the Great Hall, she hears something. Cut 2.
Interior, the Great Hall, previous night. Maelo and Prasutagus argue inside the Great Hall. Cut 2.
Exterior, near the Great Hall, previous evening, as before. Aronwin is still close to the roundhouse, listening now. Close up Aronwin's ear. Agro's lips, close to Aronwin's ear. Mid-shot, Agro leans over Aronwin, grinning wolfishly, and pressing himself against her as he continues to speak into her ear. Cut 2.
Interior, Royal Roundhouse, Icenium as before. Aronwin in bed flings her arms in her sleep. Cut 2.
Exterior, near the Great Hall, previous evening, as before. With Agro still pressed against her, Aronwin spies Merla at a distance. Their eyes meet for a moment before Merla lowers her gaze and walks away. Aronwin's eyes widen before she flushes with anger. Intercut with.
Agro and his entourage descend upon a cornered figure. Is it Aronwin? We can't see. Cut 2.
Interior, the Royal Roundhouse as before. In bed, Aronwin reaches up, still asleep, before twisting onto her side and curling herself into a ball. Cut 2.
Exterior, near the Great Hall, previous evening as before. Decarius emerges from the Great Hall covered in blood. He stares at his hands. He turns his hands over. Intercut with.
The hands turning over now belong to Aronwin, who is no less covered in blood. She stares helplessly at her hands, trying to catch her breath. She stifles a scream and a cry, bringing her hand to her mouth, blood now covering her face. Still caught in the dream, Boudica appears at her daughter's side from nowhere. Aronwin reaches out to her, but isn't quite close enough. Cut 2.
Interior, Royal Roundhouse, Icenium, as before. Branwen reaches out to her sister, her arm replacing that of Boudica's in the dream sequence. Aronwin, startled and confused and with adrenaline pumping through her body, twists, grabbing hold of Branwen's arm and pulling her in close, a small dagger now pressed against the younger girl's throat. Branwen's eyes widen in terror. The tracks of recent tears stain Aronwin's face and are joined by a fresh stream as she realizes it is her sister standing before her. Instantly, she drops the dagger and pulls Branwen into the tightest, protective and apologetic embrace. Branwen lets her sister hold her, returning the embrace even as a great sigh and sob leaves Aronwin, her chest heaving. Cut 2.
Snap to black. Titles: Boudica, Flame of the Iceni. Episode: Secrets. Snap out. Fade in. Exterior, Iceni lands, dawn. A high, expanded view of the Iceni lands, a raven's point of view. We see the sun begin to rise above the horizon. The light spills out across the land, silver and gold, adding an air of magnificence to all it touches. Cut 2.
Exterior, Iceni lands, dawn, continuous. A raven flies through frame. We follow. It lands in a barren tree near the river. Angle on the river bank. The river's edge seems to weep blood. We continue along the water's edge to take in the ripples of a blood-soaked pile of cloth that at length reveals a masculine forearm and hand. We do not see the man's face. Angle off. The raven's call loudly and flies off, out of frame. Cut to.
Exterior, Icenium, Maelo's roundhouse, dawn, moments later. Beyond the threshold of his father's roundhouse dwelling, Decarius sleeps sat up on a stool, his head propped back against the door jamb. He doesn't look like he's had much sleep. His face is covered in cuts and bruises. His left eye is swollen shut, and his lip is split. A raven caws in the distance, waking him. He jumps, suddenly conscious. He seems to groan silently, takes his time standing, holding his ribs. Clearly his new injuries are not limited to the visible region of his face. He looks out at the ever-lightening sky as he moves gingerly towards a barrel of water. Across the way, Merla, carrying 2 freshly filled water buckets, pauses for a moment. She looks over towards him, her face unreadable. Decarius sees Merla, their eyes meet. She continues on her way. He steps up to the barrel of water, staring down at his distorted reflection. He pushes out a sigh and cups his hands in the water. He lifts the water to his face. Cut 2.
Interior, royal roundhouse as before. Aronwyn brings her hands away from her face. Water drips freely. She steadies herself over a large clay bowl of water that stands on a table and stares at her reflection. Branwen watches her sister. Aronwyn continues to stare at her reflection, and then her hands.
What's happened?
Drawing in a breath, Aronwyn closes her eyes. Cut 2.
Exterior, the Great Hall, night, the previous evening. Aronwyn is pressed against the outer wall of the Great Hall. Agro leans over her. Too close for comfort, his palm flat against the wall behind her, his body against hers. Beyond him, a gaggle of young Iceni men, including Tyro and Celticus, gather round. Hanging on his every word, all of them have been drinking. They are still drinking and are happy to egg him on, despite Aronwyn's status.
So, what did you think to my proposal?
Proposal?
Come on, princess. I understand you being shy out on the field.
Did I appear shy to you? Or to you, Celticus?
Celticus looks to those around him for help, but none is offered.
Everyone watching you, hanging on your every word, your every move. I understand why you would seem to turn me down.
Seem?
But my offer still stands.
Your offer?
Come on. We both know that I am the most appropriate choice for you. The only choice, really. I mean, take a look around.
He waves his cup drunkenly towards the young warriors gathered around them.
It's either me or one of these goat humpers.
Around him the young men hiss and jeer, but laugh all along the same. Her jaw working in anger, Aronwyn stifles her initial retort and draws herself up, standing a little taller.
Goat humpers. Now that's not fair, is it, boys? From what I hear, Tyro, at least, is far more fond of his horse than he could ever be of any goat.
The jeering ribaldry is redoubled as Tyro finds himself at the centre of attention this time. He laughs along, however, and takes it in good humour.
True.
You bunch of cocks.
Agro leans in closer to Aronwyn once more, speaking quietly and for her alone.
Tyro has neither the dignity, the standing, nor the creativity to bed and please a princess.
Oh, and you believe you do?
I do.
In the distance, Merla scurries by, tending to her evening duties. She pauses briefly to glance over at Aronwyn. Their eyes meet. Merla drops her gaze once more and continues on her way.
You believe yourself to be my equal. I, who carry the blood of an ancient line within my veins,
And yet, your father only rules as king, because he was gifted that crown by an agent of Rome. All dynasties have a beginning and an end.
Around them the air becomes charged and tense.
How dare you?
I dare anything.
Aronwyn is seething, but she is also somewhat unnerved by Agro's intensity. She knows what he wants and that he's not a man to be easily deterred when he sets his mind to a task. It is a quality that she has formerly admired in him, but not at this moment.
Then perhaps you should dare to satisfy your immediate needs with one whose standards will be not so much of a challenge for you.
She takes Agro's cup of ale from him, drinking.
But if Tyro's horse proves too wily or he's simply unwilling to share, then you might try your luck with Merla. If she's anything like her mother, she will be more than willing to accommodate you in exchange for a pretty piece of jewellery or some hard-wearing boots.
She drains the cup, drinking every last drop of ale before handing it back to Agro and tapping him on the chest with the flat of her palm. This serves to move him back enough for her to move past him.
Thanks for the drink. And the amusing conversation.
Aronwyn pushes past Agro. The group open up, allowing her to pass through their centre. Only once she has moved off to a good distance do they break into laughter and begin ripping into Agro. Aronwyn hears, but does not look back. He stares after her, watching her go. As she rounds the next corner, Aronwyn falls back into the shadows, resting against the wall of another roundhouse. She leans her head against the building, closing her eyes, and pushing out a long sigh of relief, her head swimming. Cut 2.
Interior, Royal Roundhouse, Icenium as before, as if no time at all has passed. Aronwyn opens her eyes. Branwen is still at her side, still watching her.
Nothing happened. Just, you always say I can't handle my drink.
And you agree with me? Now I know there's something wrong.
Bronwyn smiles, but it does not reach her eyes. Playfully, she punches Branwen on the arm as Boudica enters the roundhouse. She appears a little downcast, a heavy burden pressing down on her, but she hides it well. Branwen beams to see her mother and moves towards her.
So here you both are.
Boudica moves further into the roundhouse, embracing Branwen as she comes to her. Still holding Branwen, she looks over to Aronwyn, who is still perched on the edge of her bed.
And how is Queen Aronwyn this morning?
Mother.
I am not here to chastise you. I love you. I have raised you and prepared you to take the Iceni throne since before you could walk. You will be a strong queen, a bold queen. That is what you were born to be. It is who you are. Never make apology for who you are, my daughter.
Boudica turns to Branwen, squeezing her once more and planting a kiss on the top of her youngest daughter's head.
Jodak is waiting outside for you, my darling.
Jodak?
Boudica nods.
We have no training plan for today.
No.
Confused and curious, Branwen nods and, throwing a final concerned look to her sister, makes her way out of the roundhouse. Boudica waits for Branwen to leave before stepping further into their home. Aronwyn looks caught between wanting to throw her arms around her mother and needing to vomit.
You look terrible.
Aronwyn nods.
What do I do now?
Do?
It was my fault.
The matter has been taken care of.
Taken care of?
Yes.
How can you be so...
Cold?
Detached?
Because that is what the situation demands. queen must be every one of her people. But to be everything always and also to feel for everything and then to lose them, well, it is simply not possible. It would break your heart over and drive you into madness.
So you grow detached?
Boudica nods, tears forming in her eyes. Aronwin does not notice.
I don't know that I can.
You will. One day.
I don't know that I want to.
Aronwin looks up, noticing her mother and the sorrow she is trying to keep at bay.
Mother?
Aronwin stands and moves to Boudica. She takes her daughter's hands in hers and squeezes it.
You have been summoned.
Aronwin turns pale and looks as though she might vomit once more. She stares at the flames in the hearth, listening to them crackle and spit. Close upon the flames. Cut to.
Exterior. Catus Decianus's lodgings, previous night. Close upon. The flames in a grate beyond a large roundhouse. Pull back to reveal. 2 legionaries, Junius and Flack, standing guard at the entrance. Decarius, absent of any cuts or bruises, exits the roundhouse, stepping out into the street. Catus Decianus calls after him, moving to the door, but not beyond it.
Thank you for escorting us, Decarius. The night is still young, if not a little chilly.
Sir.
You have a place to stay for the evening?
I do, sir. Thank you.
Oh, then I will bid you good night. If you happen upon Calaminus, will you remind him that we have an early... wait. Forgive me, Decarius. You have your own... I forget myself. The wine and all of us being reunited. It reminded me of home. But you are a man now, and a soldier of Rome. You make me proud, indeed.
Decarius nods uncomfortably, but smiles at Decianus all the same.
Right, sir.
Decianus smiles and claps Decarius on the back, before disappearing eagerly inside the roundhouse. As he moves off, Junius and Flacker stare at Decarius with a barely masked hostility, but they remain silent. Decarius walks a few paces, then pauses, reacting to something. Decarius' point of view. Maelo stands opposite, watching, his arms folded across his chest. He raises his chin, briefly in a cold sort of greeting. He calls to Decarius in Iceni.
You have been summoned.
Angle off. Decarius nods and makes towards Maelo, who turns his back and leads the way towards the great hall. Cut to.
Previous night, minutes later. Prasutagus is seated on his throne before a roaring fire in the central hearth. Jodak and Boudica are with him. Jodak is seated on a stool before the king, while Boudica paces around the fire, listening to the conversation and nodding.
Yes, my king, but the question remains, as ever, as it always will.
Can the Romans be trusted?
Prasutagus opens his mouth, then pauses. He can't answer with any certainty. Not yet. In that moment, the leather doorskin is pulled back to allow Maelo and Decarius entry to the great hall. Boudica draws in a breath, looking to Prasutagus, an icy question on her lips. Jodak's eyes flicker from Maelo to Decarius. Maelo indicates to Decarius with a simple gesture of his head as he makes his way around the hearth, taking a seat on the stool in the shadows. Decarius hovers near the door, uncertain. Prasutagus is the only one to smile warmly at the young man.
Decarius.
Decarius' natural reaction, after so many years in the Roman cavalry, is to snap off a salute. He manages to stop himself midway, but this has already drawn a disgusted snicker from Maelo. Decarius alters his stance, bringing his arm across his chest and bowing to the king and queen before him.
Prasutagus. Queen Boudica.
A heavy silence hangs in the air.
Thank you for coming.
Decarius nods.
Are you armed?
They're always armed. Romans lack the physical strength of tribesmen, and they know it.
Decarius rolls his eyes, fighting back his response.
Something to say, boy?
Decarius stands tall and still, eyes straight forward, but engaging with no one. He won't be drawn into a fight.
Maelo, my queen, I would speak with Decarius for a moment. I will keep counsel with you and the Flame Keeper later this night.
Boudica raises an eyebrow, but remains still and calm. After a moment, she moves to her husband, placing a kiss on his forehead.
This is a night of celebrations, husband. Wait too long to call upon us, and the advice your council return to give may not be as sober as you would like. Or it may be more so.
Prasutagus nods. Jodak stands, bowing his head to his king. Maelo also stands, ready to fall in line and exit behind Jodak.
Maelo, you will stay.
Maelo looks momentarily outraged, but stiffly sits back down. As Boudica passes by, Decarius bows his head with respect. She does not acknowledge him. Jodak smiles. The pair exit the Great Hall. Follow too.
Exterior. Before the Great Hall, previous night. Continuous. Boudica and Jodak walk side by side. When they are safely 5 paces from the Great Hall, they begin to speak in hushed tones.
It's a dangerous game he plays with them.
Reuniting Maelo and his son is no game, Jodak. It is futile.
Life is a series of games, my queen, with many being played at once. Wisdom comes in knowing when to hold and when to move, when to abandon one game and give your focus over entirely to another, when to give way and when to strike. The result may be futile, but we tried it all is sometimes enough.
And when it is not enough?
Then you must know when to sacrifice and to carry that burden with it.
Alone?
Not always.
Cut 2.
Interior. The Great Hall, previous night continuous. Prasutagus stands pouring a cup of ale for himself, Maelo and Decarius. Maelo remains seated, arms folded across his chest. Decarius remains standing near the entrance.
Relax, Decarius. You are not in trouble.
Maelo glares. Prasutagus hands his sword-bearer a cup of ale, then moves to hand the second one to Decarius, keeping the third for himself.
What should we toast?
Your good health, perhaps.
Why? Do you know something we don't, boy?
Forgive me, King Prasutagus. Perhaps it would be better if I left.
Absolutely not. You are my guest, Maelo. If you cannot be civil to this man, who is your son.
He is no son of mine. Look at him. He's a Roman dog.
If you cannot be civil to him as he is your son, you will be civil to him as he is my guest.
Maelo spits, but takes a seat once more.
Please, Decarius, come, sit here.
Decarius follows Prasutagus, but does not get to the opportunity to sit.
Thank you, sir. I mean, my king.
He is not your king. You don't have a king. You have an emperor.
Rome has an emperor. I am an Iceni.
You don't know what that means. Did
the first 11 summers of my life count for nothing? Does Does the blood that runs through my veins count for nothing?
Blood that you have spilled for Rome.
It is still Iceni blood, Father. Your blood. Our blood.
Do not call me that. I am no longer your father. I don't know you. And I would open my veins and expel every last drop if I thought for one moment that we share anything more than a memory. A story of the boy that was once my son. That's all you are now.
Silence. Even Maelo appears a little shocked at his last outburst, but he cannot back down. Decarius regards him, holds his gaze.
And is that what you expected of me? To open my veins, the veins of a child? Is that why I'm such a disappointment to you? Because I didn't take my own life when you abandoned me to the mercy of Rome in exchange for your own peaceful existence.
That choice was never mine.
Because I remember a man that I once recognized as my father telling me to be strong. I remember standing at the gates of Icenium, terrified and shaking inside, though I dared let no one see the extent of that fear. As the one man I trusted more than any other in this world handed me over to a waiting stranger. That man told me I would survive. He said I would survive because I was Iceni, and that nothing could ever change that. Nothing and no one could ever change who I was. And no matter where I was, my ancestors would always be with me, to watch me and to guide me. That man told me I would find my own way, carve my own path, and that one day, that path would lead me home. But where is that man now? Because I don't see him here.
Maelo can make no reply, but stands staring at Decarius. He is quaking with mixed emotions and trying to hold all in check. Decarius shakes his head, a mirthless laugh escaping his lips.
You judge me for appearing before you clad as a soldier of Rome. But these are all the garments I have, Father. I didn't hand me over to the enemy of our people with only the clothes on my back.
This final blow is too much for Maelo, who slings his cup of ale. It smashes against the wall as he glares at Decarius.
Oh, fuck this.
Maelo storms past Decarius and Prasutagus both. He exits the great hall. Prasutagus sighs and places his hand on Decarius' shoulder. He leads him towards the throne dais, and indicates for Decarius to sit on the stool before the throne. Instead of sitting on the throne himself, Prasutagus pulls up Maelo's stool and sits next to Decarius.
Apologies, King Prasutagus.
Your father's heart is heavy with guilt, Decarius. You must know that.
I do, but I cannot change the past.
No man can. We only ever have the power to shape our futures, and only then with the blessings of the gods.
I used to dream of seeing him again. I thought he would. I hoped he might embrace me, that we would laugh together in our home, together with our... But he will never accept me, and neither will they.
Give him time.
He's so angry with me.
It is not with you he is truly angry with.
I understand that he blames himself as well, but...
That he blames me, and he is right, so.
Silence. Decarius drinks, understanding.
When we were at Camalodunum, you safely escorted my daughters to the procurator's residence. I wanted to thank you for that.
I think Bronwyn would have managed well enough without me.
Decarius and Prasutagus smile briefly.
She will be a fierce leader for her people, but she needs guidance.
Decarius takes another drink of his ale, finishing it. He stares at the cup, considering. Prasutagus senses a level of unease in the young man.
What is it? You may speak freely here.
Do you think the Empire will accept, that is, do you think that Rome will allow Aronwin and Branwen to rule after you?
Rome is many miles from our shores.
And yet her people inhabit those shores, impose laws, taxes.
I understand your fear in airing such a question, but I admire you all the more that you have done so. You know the mind of the Roman powers at work in our lands better than any other here, including your king.
Majesty.
What do you think they will do? How will the governor react?
Decarius shakes his head.
Decarius?
Rome doesn't recognize queens, sir. Majesty. And the governor, he is very Roman.
Prasutagus' face lights up, a broad smile spreading across his features even as he begins to laugh.
He is. He is indeed.
Prasutagus tops up Decarius' cup.
Decarius, forgive me, but I need to ask, what did Paulinus say to you when you returned?
Majesty, I
am not asking you to betray your oath, Decarius, or your own honor. I need to know. There were far too many soldiers present for a town that size. Infantry, cavalry, artillery, wagons. He's planning something, and I need to know what. Please, Decarius, help me. Help your people.
Decarius stares at Prasutagus for the longest time before conceding. Fade 2.
Interior, to Blinum, Principia building, Camalodunum, days earlier. Decarius stands to attention before Paulinus, who reclines against the edge of his desk as he speaks.
You will know the history of this island, Decarius, or you will have your tribal account of it, at least. But what do you know of Britannia's history with Rome? That moment that this shitty little forgotten corner of the world suddenly became interesting. Important, even.
Decarius remains silent, knowing not to answer unless he is directly questioned.
The first man to rule this shithole on behalf of Emperor Claudius was General Aulus Plautius, and he did much to bring it to heel. But even he was not the first general to lead his men across the ocean and into the cold embrace of Britannia. Do you know who was?
It was Julius Caesar, sir, during the Gallic Wars.
Linus releases a patronizing belt of laughter, clapping his hands together. He pours himself a large chalice of pre-watered wine.
You surprise me, Decarius. Pleasantly so. I am not a man who is often nor easily surprised.
Linus pauses and watches Decarius for a moment, affecting to remember.
But, of course, you were blessed with a Roman education after all, even if you entered into it a little later than most boys.
Sir?
Paulinus moves around the desk to take his seat.
And what was life like for the young Decarius, maturing under the tuition, the procurator and his wife? She's about your age, is she not?
She is, sir.
Paulinus pauses for a moment, giving Decarius an opportunity to speak further should he wish to. Decarius remains silent.
Ever the gentleman, I see, Decarius. I like that about you. Well, to return to my tale. Plautius met with resistance, which only continued to manifest itself more and more strongly during the governorships of Scapula. Gallus and Britannis, for all the use he was. I intend to put an end to all resistance here. Many in Rome believe the renegade Prasutagus to be the problem, but they don't know Britannia as I do. They're soft, and they are 100,000 miles away from this brittle, flinty, grey, and volatile, shitty little island.
Silence descends as Paulinus takes a long drink from his chalice. Decarius remains crisp in his stance.
Tell me, Decarius, what do you know of the island of Mona?
Decarius tries to remain neutral, though his face betrays his concern at the question. Cut 2.
Interior, the great hall, previous night, as before. Prasutagus stands wide-eyed, staring at Decarius. Decarius waits patiently, allowing his words to sink in.
Mona.
Decarius nods.
He means to move against the druids?
He means to eradicate the druids and the sacred groves entirely, along with every man and women there.
And the children?
He will kill them all.
Prasutagus is horrified and does not try to conceal the fact. Cut 2.
Interior, Catus Decianus's lodgings, morning. Decianus turns over in bed to find Sabina already awake. She is wrapped up in layers of material and furs, but despite this, she is dithering. Decianus smiles at her.
Good morning, my love. Have you been awake long?
I don't know that I have even slept. I was too scared to. And even when I was so tired that I thought sleep should surely claim me, the cold climate of this god-forsaken place prevented Morpheus from making any such appearance.
I see that your mood has not improved this morning.
Forgive me, Catus, but I hate it here. I miss our house in Gaul. I miss Rome. I even miss the little cornerstone of civilization that we have built together in Camalodunum. Clearly, I am cut from far more delicate stone than either you or Decarius.
It isn't all that easy for me either, you know. Decarius is at least native to these parts and can adjust.
I know. Poor boy.
Sabina turns to Decianus, smiling at him and playing with his hair.
You have always been so kind to him, so patient. Every inch the father he truly needed.
I don't know.
You think that oaf, Maelo, would have raised him better than you could have? Look at all that you've given him.
Do you really think that?
The day the Iceni were put down and Decarius was taken from them was the day that boy was saved. He came out of that revolt better than Prasutagus himself.
I don't know that Decarius would agree with you.
You are more of a father to him than that savage could ever have been. More than he could ever be.
But now he is grown. Do you think we might?
Catus?
Never mind. Where is Calaminus? We could do with some hot water. The fire needs some mending, and I need to wash and prepare for the day.
Calm yourself.
Sabina kisses his cheek and climbs out of bed. She is quick to throw a gown over her. wrapping it around her naked body, keen to retain as much of the warmth as possible.
I will locate Calamennes, and we shall have hot water soon enough.
Sabina lets her hands fall over her belly as she speaks.
And in the year, perhaps the sun will follow, if Prasutagus' claims are warranted.
Decianus smiles lovingly at her as she heads out of the nook of the bedroom. She pauses at the last moment.
I know you have an affinity for these barbarians, Catus, but I feel I must put my foot down in this matter and insist that our child will be raised in the civilized world, among the civilized people of Rome.
Decianus laughs out loud, full of good humour and admiration.
You have my word.
Good.
I love you, Sabina Lupo. You never change.
Perish the thought.
She winks at him and moves towards the heavy leather door of the roundhouse. Parting the shutter, she steps outside. Follow too.
Exterior, before Catus Decianus' lodgings, continuous. Sabina looks questioningly at the dithering slaves waiting near the equally sullen-looking legionaries posted at her door.
Where is Calamennes?
The cold seems to hit her then, redirecting her focus.
Oh, never mind that. Fetch us hot water for washing and someone mend the fire. Why has it not already been tended? No, don't answer me. Just see that it is done and be quick about it.
The slaves bow graciously and answer in unison, acknowledging Sabina.
Domina.
Sabina returns to the confines of the roundhouse. The eyes of the two legionaries crawl all over her as she turns from them. They exchange a glance and grin. Cut to.
Interior, the Great Hall, mid-morning. Boudica enters the Great Hall, followed by Aronwin and then Branwen, who is holding Jodak's hand. The princess's face are awash with confusion, and then concern, as they take in the scene before them. Ahead of them, instead of being seated upon his dais, as he would normally, Prasutagus is wrapped in furs and seated on the floor near the central hearth. Eyes closed, Prasutagus looks almost as pale as death itself, though sweat beads his regal brow. Aronwin and Branwen exchange looks, knowing instantly that something is absolutely not right. Both wish to scream, yet neither of them can speak. Eventually, Boudica approaches Prasutagus. She kneels by him, taking his hand.
Husband, I have brought your daughters.
Prasutagus opens his eyes. He smiles.
Thank you, my queen.
Prasutagus takes a moment to look over towards Aronwin and Branwen. He smiles once more, but then, as his eyes continue to search, his smile suddenly drops.
I wish to speak with all of my daughters.
These are your royal heirs.
And they will shortly inherit half of all my worldly goods and the lands of the Iceni, along with the great responsibility of protecting and leading our people. But I have 3 daughters, Boudica, all of whom I would behold and enfold in my arms one last time.
Boudica remains still.
Impossible, woman. You would deny a dying man his last request.
Aronwin gasps audibly, trying to hold her emotions in check, even as the tears stream from Branwen's eyes. The young princess breaks from her Jodak, running to embrace her father. Aronwin fights back tears. Boudica stands, also struggling against tears.
I will deny you nothing.
Father?
All is as it should be, my daughter.
No.
Please, I would speak with all of my daughters.
Boudica stands tall. While she is not unmoved by his request, she is proud and Merla is a living reminder of Prasutagus' transgression against their marriage bed.
I will fetch Merla.
Prasutagus nods at Aronwin, who, without another word, exits the Great Hall. Follow too.
Exterior, the Great Hall, mid-morning and continuous. Boudica follows Aronwin, catching her by the arm.
She should be here, Mother. She should be here.
Boudica nods.
I will be quick.
She turns from Boudica, racing towards Merla's hut, only wiping the tears from her eyes when she's convinced that she is no longer being watched by her mother. She rounds another corner and halts, seeing Decarius heading in the direction of the Great Hall. He is covered in cuts and bruises and has a distinct hobble to his step. Aronwin frowns, but he does not see her. He is caught up in his own thoughts. Cut 2.
Exterior, Icenium, Maelo's roundhouse, mid-morning. Limping, bruised and stiff in the damp morning air, Decarius, now with a flagon of ale in one hand, a clay cup in the other, makes his way back towards Maelo's roundhouse. He stops beyond the entrance, and it is clear that he is in two minds about his next move. He is torn, a foot in each camp of two very different cultures. As he hesitates, Sabina, busy searching for Calimenes, sees him and approaches. She calls to him.
Decarius!
Only as she nears does she take in the full extent of his injuries.
Decarius, by all the gods, what happened to you?
Decarius simply shakes his head. Sabina takes hold of his chin, turning his face to her.
Decarius, speak to me. Who did this to you? How dare they? These people are... Well, they're not even people. They are savages, brutes, barbarians. Tell me who did this to you, and I will see that an example is made of their flesh.
Decarius is filled with a sorrow and rage that he can barely contain.
Do you think that will help?
We cannot let such action go unpunished.
We?
Of course. You know as well as I that an assault on the officer of Rome is an assault on Rome herself.
I am not an officer of Rome.
You will be one day. You have all the makings.
What would you know of it, Sabina?
Your words are hard, Decarius, your tone cutting. Do you really mean to cut a friend so?
No.
An attack on a Roman cavalry?
Please, Sabina, I am not Roman.
Well, you're certainly not one of them.
No, it would seem that way. The Iceni see me as part of their fever coursing through their lands. Another cog in the Roman machine. And yet to the citizens and soldiers of Rome, to them I am a reminder of what they see as an infestation here. Savage people in a savage land. A problem to be solved, a disease to be cured.
Decarius's voice is thick with emotion. Sabina takes a step closer, trying to soothe him.
This is savage in a uniform. An amusement or a threat, but never an equal, never a friend. I don't know who I am, Sabina, or who I am meant to be.
Not knowing quite how to continue, Decarius's voice dwindles to nothing. Sabina places her hand on his arm. He looks down at it, then further still to the jug of ale in his hand. Then his gaze wanders back towards Maelo's home, the home of his childhood.
What am I doing here?
A silence descends. Decarius stares at Maelo's hut, wishing and willing his estranged father to step outside, but knowing that he never will.
You know, I've never looked at you as a disease to be cleansed or a savage to be tamed. Don't you?
I was part of their bargain. A guarantee of good behaviour. My Roman tuition began from the moment I was exchanged. I was already becoming civilized by the time we met.
Sabina moves to take hold of Decarius's hand, but pauses in the motion. In the distance, Catus Decianus approaches the pair.
Greetings, Decarius.
Reaching the clay cup to his other hand, Decarius snaps off a sharp salute, despite his injuries. Decianus waves him down.
Come on, there's no need for such formalities. What in the name of great Jupiter happened to you?
Decarius is biting back tears, trying not to look at Decianus, while simultaneously attempting not to show disrespect to the procurator. Decianus silently quizzes Sabina, who simply shakes her head.
Did Maelo do this to you? Is that why? Did you? Forgive me, Decarius. There are whispers in the town this morning.
Seeming to sense something suddenly dangerous in Decarius, Decianus takes Sabina's arm, drawing her close to himself and away from the man who was once his ward.
Catus!
Even as Sabina looks to her husband for answers, feeling a little embarrassed at the sudden change in him, Decarius breaks.
Maelo is dead.
Sabina stares at him in disbelief, trying to understand what he is saying, her mind drawing on 100,000 different scenarios and ways in which Maelo might have died, and equally how Decarius might have become injured. She seems to notice for the first time that the front of his uniform is stained with blood, a lot of blood. Sabina opens her mouth, but no words escape. Decarius stares at her, lost in his grief, but can find no words to explain. We pan down to the jug of ale in his hand. Cut 2.
Exterior, the great hall previous night. Prasutagus' arm around his shoulder, Decarius, absent of any signs of bruising, exits the roundhouse. The pair clasp forearms, but a sombre silence seems to bind them. At length they part and Prasutagus returns to the great hall. Decarius makes his way through the streets of Icenium, looking like a man with the weight of the world upon his shoulders. Cut 2.
Exterior, storehouse, moments later. Decarius passes one of the settlement's storehouses, and hearing someone cry out within, pauses. He makes his way around to the entry, where he finds 2 of Agro's goons, Tendrus and Scut, keeping watch.
Lost your way, Roman?
Decarius raises his eyebrow before craning to peer inside.
Something wrong with his ears too. Or maybe it's just that Roman whore cat has his tongue. What's her name? Sabina.
Decarius struggles to contain his anger. Tendrus leers at Decarius as the muted sounds of someone calling for help drift from the storehouse beyond.
Who is in there?
Tendrus stands squarely before Decarius, puffing out his chest and making himself larger, filling the door.
Keep walking.
Decarius knows he should, but he cannot.
Definitely something wrong with this coward's ears.
Decarius bristles but remains calm, his eyes flicking to Scut before returning to settle on Tendrus.
He's in there.
Maybe it's the whore cat herself.
Tendrus doesn't have time to avoid the impact of Decarius's forehead as it smashes into the larger man's nose. As Tendrus reels from the blow, Decarius takes Scutt's face in the palm of his hand and drives his head back into the beam of the door jamb with enough force to render him instantly unconscious. Recovered somewhat, Tendrus drives at Decarius, his arms around his middle. Decarius uses the warrior's force against him as they plunge to the ground. Twisting at the last moment, Decarius grapples to land on top of Tendrus, punching him several times in the face before Tendrus smashes his fist into Decarius's midriff, winding him. The pair scuffle and roll until Decarius eventually gets purchase, wrapping his legs around Tendrus's body from behind and shaking his arms around the warrior's thick neck. Decarius's hold holds on to tight, squeezing until Tendrus falls still. He hangs on for a few seconds longer before releasing the now unconscious Hulk. Clambering to his feet, Decarius makes his way back towards the storehouse entrance, peers inside. Follow too.
Interior, storehouse continuous. This storehouse is filled with barrels of fermenting ale and dry supplies, wheat, barley. Plenty of barrels and boxes, places for him to remain unseen as he approaches and assesses the commotion. At the far end of the storehouse, he spies another 3 warriors gathered around a barrel, drinking. 2 of them, Tyro and Calticus, arm wrestle, while the 3rd man, Renus, judges the contest. They laugh and boast and drink. Somewhere unseen, Decarius hears the muffled cries once more. He moves position and finds Agro, bare arms pinning a girl he cannot currently see. The girl beneath the thrusting weight of Agro is Merla. Decarius turns away, leaning his back against a barrel as he tries to form a plan. Angle on Agro and Merla.
Fuck sake, girl. Stop bloody crying. You should feel honoured. Blood of Prasutagus or not. My seed should be inside a true princess right now, but if she wasn't so fucking stubborn.
Finally finished, Agro breathes heavily and disentangles himself from Merla. He pauses for a moment, still hovering over her. He regards Merla, but still does not see her.
You look more like her sister.
Pulls a face and shrugs to himself before pushing himself up to stand. Angle off, follow too.
Agro returns to the group, adjusting himself and tying up his trousers as he goes. He sits, taking up a cup of ale and drinking deep, just as the match is won, and the victor, Tyro, jumps, punching the air in celebration.
Yes! Yes! My turn.
You think so?
I thought that's what we were playing for.
That is so fucking disrespectful.
Tyro looks momentarily worried, as do Calticus and Renus. They also thought Merla was the winner's prize in each round. After another moment, Agro laughs.
By the god, you're so fucking easy. Go on. Enjoy her.
Tyro moves out of view, already busy at his trousers.
If she whelps a bastard, we're naming you the father.
There is a strange noise and the sound of a body hitting the ground. Agro and the remaining 2 warriors exchange looks. Jumping to their feet, we follow the trio around to the site where Agro had been moments earlier, only to find the unconscious body of Tyro lying awkwardly upon the floor. Intercut with.
Interior, storehouse and other area continuous. Decarius holds onto Merla's hand, and ducking low, the pair move quickly through the dark shadows of the storehouse. As they reach the entrance, Decarius casts a wary eye around, before placing his finger to his lips and indicating for Merla to go. In that moment, Scut appears seemingly from nowhere. Decarius rams a solid fist into Scut's face, dropping him instantly, but the noise has given away their position, and Agro and his 2-man entourage are fast approaching.
Go!
As Merla flees, Decarius turns and prepares to hold off the pursuing trio. Agro's anger and resentment bubble visibly seeing Decarius. Raising his fists, Decarius feels suddenly uneasy as an evil grin breaks across Agro's face and a groggy and pissed off Tendrus rises into frame behind Decarius. As if things couldn't get any worse, Tyro rounds the corner ahead of him to join Agro, Calticus and Renus.
Shit.
With a menacing and wolfish grin, Agro takes a slow but determined step forward. Cut 2.
Interior, Merla's hut, mid-morning, moments later. Aronwin enters the hut without knocking. Naked, Merla is sat in a small iron tub near her small hearth, washing herself. She pauses, still as a creature being hunted, when Aronwin enters. Realizing who it is standing there, Merla glares at Aronwyn with an open hostility, almost daring her to take another step inside her home. Distracted, Aronwyn misses the murderous look in her eyes.
Dress, and quickly. My father, our king, wishes to speak with you.
Still staring daggers at Aronwyn, Merla simply nods. Aronwyn nods in return and ducks outside to wait, fighting back tears once more. Merla stands, revealing a mass of innumerable bruises that cover her thighs, arms, wrists, waist, and throat. Cut 2.
Interior, storehouse, previous night, 10 minutes later. Decarius is sprawled on the floor, his face is already a bloody mess. One eye is virtually closed with swelling. A length of rope tied around his neck is held by Tyro and the now conscious Scott, who use it to drag him further into the storehouse. Agro kicks Decarius in the ribs as he is dragged past. Tendra stamps painfully on his knee. There is much noise and laughter as Renus binds Decarius' hands and loops a rope around a beam. Tyro and Scott haul him into the air. They suspend him so that his toes barely touch the ground, meaning that he is not in immediate danger of suffocation, but neither is he anywhere near being comfortable. Drinks are poured, passed around, and consumed as Decarius awaits his fate.
Well, you picked the wrong time to be a fucking hero, Decarius.
Agro spits on the floor next to Decarius' feet.
No wonder your father never wanted to speak of you. Too fucking ashamed.
When Decarius speaks, it's a strangled noise that comes out with great difficulty.
I bet you never stop talking about me. You're a substitute for the son you lost.
You.
Wasn't easy growing up with Maelo. I should know.
As Agro stares daggers at Decarius, Tendrus leans in to speak quietly to Scott.
He's got balls, I'll give him that.
Yeah, for now.
The pair laugh and Agro turns to see them. He takes the knife from Scott.
I always wanted to make a Roman squeal. Where shall we start, lads?
Decarius fixes Agro with his one good eye.
Did Maelo actually beat the brains out of your head, or were you always this stupid?
The young warriors fall silent. Agro glowers, hands the knife back to Scott, and punches Decarius painfully in the midriff. It causes him to double over, as much as he can, and momentarily he loses his purchase on the floor. He coughs and chokes as he tries to stand and breathe once more.
Are you always this brave? Or only when facing your death?
You really don't get it, do you?
Enlighten me.
You can hate me all you want, but kill me, and the might of Rome will fall like the Cyclops hammer of Icenium. Are you really prepared to risk the lives of everyone here?
Silence. Agro glares at Decarius.
What's a Cyclops?
Some fucking Roman shit.
It's Greek, but you tried.
Agro backhands Decarius with such force that it makes his eyes roll and splits his lip.
Shut the fuck up! You think you're better than us? You think your fancy Roman education will save you?
Decarius spits a globule of thick blood on the ground. Agro takes the knife from Scott and presses the point in at Decarius' throat. Decarius meets his gaze and seems to shrug. On your head be it. This enrages Agro still further, and for a moment he seems to will Decarius' throat there and then. However, unbeknownst to Agro and the group of warriors, Jodak has entered the storehouse. The Flamekeeper approaches the group.
Evening, boys.
The entourage become wide-eyed and very still. offering nothing in the way of a greeting or explanation to the Flamekeeper. Jodak simply stands, waiting patiently.
Flamekeeper, I'm glad you are here. We caught this treacherous Roman dog trying to defile one of our women.
A moment of tension passes.
A daughter of the king, no less.
Silence. Jodak considers this.
Is this true?
The group of warriors get behind Agro, confirming his story as one, or as though it were the absolute truth.
No. She would have plunged a dagger into the heart of such a man before roasting him on a spit. But surely not. Branwen, a daughter of the flame?
A few of the warriors shake their heads, seemingly horrified by the idea.
No, Flamekeeper. It was Merla. She may be the daughter of a Trivanti slave, but she's also the daughter of a king, and one of our own. We didn't think it right to let such an act go unpunished.
Seeming to believe their tale, Jodak takes a seat on one of the barrels within the storehouse. Believing the Flamekeeper to be on his side, Agro leers at Decarius, his face full of malice and evil intent.
And what justice would you see meted to the perpetrator of such a crime?
Well, we were thinking, cut his balls off.
Poke out his eyes.
Jodak nods as he listens.
Offer his blood as a sacrifice to great Andraste, that she may free us from the filthy, choking grasp of Rome.
Ah, so you would bring the gods into it as well?
Of course. A blood sacrifice such as this would...
The gods who shape our future fate, and know the truth of our hearts and our minds. The gods who see all.
A few of the warriors look a little unnerved. Jodak stands and begins to make his way, slowly, toward Agro.
Who know every truth, every lie, and every transgression that we have ever breathed, or thought, or enacted.
Calmly but firmly, Jodak takes the knife from Agro's hand.
He needs to pay for his crimes.
Perhaps. Any man who would force himself upon a daughter of the gods is no true man. And had I the power, I would decree that such a man would... But forgive me. I am merely an instrument of the gods. I do their will, no more, no less.
Realizing that Jodak knows that they do not speak truthfully, many of the warriors take an interest in the ground or shuffle away, but Agro remains firm.
Are you so sure they are on your side, Flamekeeper?
With a terrifying grin, Jodak leans in close to Agro.
Who do you think sent me?
In one swift movement, he takes the knife from Agro, waving it in a mild, threatening manner before the leader of the pack.
Now, get out of here before I assist you to the other side myself.
After a moment, Agro backs off, sneering at Jodak and hitting Decarius in the stomach with the side of his fist. Jodak eyeballs him, and Agro holds his hand up, moving away.
I slipped.
Decarius doubles in pain, instantly struggling once more against the noose that holds him. The group make their way toward the exit. Once he knows they are gone, Jodak turns his attention to Decarius, cutting him free. Decarius coughs and splutters as he is released, and the full force of the air hits his lungs once more. He manages to remain on his feet, but only just. His knee is badly injured, maybe dislocated.
Thank you.
It's not me you need to thank.
Merla.
Jodak nods and smiles.
Who do you think sent me? Now, come on. Let's get you cleaned up. I'll take a look at that knee, too.
Cutting the rope around Decarius' hands, Jodak feeds Decarius' arm over his shoulder, wrapping his own arm around the young man's waist to steady him.
Thank you. By the feel of it, I think this knee is broken with a capital F.
Jodak laughs out loud.
I like you, son of Maelo.
Decarius pauses, staring at him.
Don't. Please.
You will always be his son, his true son. Your actions tonight prove it. You are a brave, if not foolish man, Decarius.
Decarius laughs. They begin making painfully slow progress toward the door.
Sadly, I do not know that you will ever truly fit in with the young warriors here.
That's not necessarily a bad thing considering their actions tonight.
It is if you want to live. I think you should consider leaving Icenium sooner rather than later, after your father's...
A look of horror passes across Jodak's face as he realizes he has said too much, though this, of course, makes no sense to Decarius, who simply regards the Flamekeeper.
After my father's... what?
Blessing. Blessing is bestowed.
My father's blessing? I could be here 20 years and never receive such a thing.
He is a proud man.
He is stubborn.
As is another I know of that bloodline.
Jodak smiles, gently slapping Decarius on the chest. Decarius smiles in return, trusting the Flamekeeper, but feeling also that he is keeping something from him. Whether for his own protection or not, it makes Decarius uncomfortable. Still, he allows Jodak to lead him out. Cut to.
Tyria, the Great Hall, previous night, late. Maelo, now very drunk, has returned to the Great Hall. He holds a jug of ale in one hand, so very like Decarius. Prasutagus sits, drinking and listening, while Maelo paces around beyond the edge of the hearth, venting his anger.
Would never have happened if Antedius's flank had held.
Prasutagus remains silent, but eyes Maelo, who stops momentarily in his tracks.
You don't agree?
Perhaps things would have been different. Perhaps the battle would have gone his way, but the fact remains Antedius broke bread with Rome.
Yes. And then he rose against them because he knew something about honor. And
You overstep. It was you who convinced him to relent his oath, an oath he made before our gods and theirs.
And I would do so every time.
Is it any wonder the gods have punished you so?
Casting his drink to the ground, Maelo squares up to Prasutagus, a growl on his lips.
It was Rome that took my boy, not the gods.
With whose authority do you think we act? How are we moved, if not by the gods?
They're in our land, Prasutagus. Rome is less than shit to the gods.
And yet, Rome prevailed.
Maelo is filled with a rage and sorrow spanning years. He is so very consumed by his emotions he can barely contain them.
He was just a boy.
And now he's a man.
I don't recognize that man.
And yet, he would know you.
It cut with.
Hysteria, Icenium previous night, late, continuous. As the following action unfolds, Maelo and Prasutagus continues to speak over the top. Near Jodak's home, Arvo approaches and greets Decarius, who, battered, bruised and limping, still snaps off a decent salute. Arvo waves him down and claps hold of his forearm in a friendly, soldierly embrace. He gestures to Decarius's face, arms and noticeable limp questioningly, but Decarius waves him down, shaking his head. It's nothing.
He was never supposed to fight for them.
What did you expect would happen?
I expected him to come home.
He didn't know that he had a home to come back to.
Of course he did.
He believed he was protecting you and all of us. He believed he was doing what was expected of him.
He was a good boy. Always did as he was told.
Arvo leans in to give Decarius a message. He has been summoned once more by Prasutagus to the Great Hall. He nods his thanks and Arvo indicates that he should join them at the tents for a drink after. Decarius nods and manages a weak smile. He begins to make his way towards the central roundhouse that is the Great Hall.
I hated that about him. A son is supposed to question his father, question his place in this world, strive to be better than those that came before him. Not simply roll over and...
Intercut with.
Interior, the Great Hall, previous night, as before.
Submit.
Maelo does not answer, but simply downs the contents of his cup, then refills it in one smooth motion.
You can't blame him for doing what he thought was best, for being a dutiful son, Maelo.
His duty lies only with Rome.
He is your son.
He is lost to me.
Silence.
You are as stubborn as a mule, and so is Decarius. There's not many boys could have endured all he will have been through and remained strong enough to be true to himself and his people. That, too, is a trait he owes to you. You are more alike than you know.
No, we are nothing alike.
Decarius
is dead. It is Decarius now. Decarius, soldier of Rome.
Your son.
My son died because of you. And I chose to follow you. You Roman-loving dog.
What did you say?
You heard me.
You are drunk.
Fueled by alcohol, angry, bitter, and spoiling for a fight, Maelo launches himself at Prasutagus. The pair scuffle, as they might on any other evening when the ale flows, but this time Maelo's rage and grief simply won't allow him to back down. Cut 2.
Exterior, the Great Hall, previous night continuous. Decarius approaches the Great Hall, slowly and clearly in pain. The two Iceni guards, Blondie and Auburn, step away from the Great Hall and out toward the square to meet Decarius, stopping him in his tracks. He indicates to the hall, explaining that he has been summoned. The pair shake their heads and bar his way for now, questioning him about his injuries and where he came by them. Cut 2.
Interior, the Great Hall, previous night, continuous. Prasutagus and Maelo continue to fight. Maelo drunkenly draws his dagger before he realizes what he has done. Prasutagus shakes his head at Maelo, still trying to talk his friend down, but is equally furious. He is the king, after all. Maelo, seeming to realize that there is no coming back from this, waves the dagger at Prasutagus again and indicates for him to pick up his own. Beyond angry, Prasutagus does so.
Exterior, beyond the Great Hall, previous night continuous. Blondie and Auburn continue to question Decarius. We see him indicate to the Great Hall, see the frustration on his face. I have been summoned. Cut 2.
Interior, the Great Hall, previous night, continuous. Maelo and Prasutagus grapple in a vicious knife fight, closing and dodging, each drawing blood and inflicting injuries on the other. This fight is the culmination of years of tension and unvoiced outrage felt so keenly by both men. Prasutagus could call out to his men and have Maelo seized, but his pride and honor as a warrior, not to mention his belief that he can eventually tire and then calm Maelo, prevent him from doing so. Maelo is like a wild beast. He is drunk and angry and far too proud to back down. The pair come dangerously near to the fire that rages in the hearth. Prasutagus catches hold of Maelo, saving him, and for a moment the pair seem to breathe a sigh of relief. Prasutagus' eyes find Maelo's and silently plead that he lay down his weapon. Instead, Maelo shoves Prasutagus away, unbalancing both of them. Prasutagus clatters against the thrones, spilling them across the raised dais. Maelo, in pushing back and rolling, falls into the fire. He shrieks instinctively, and continues to roll, scattering red-hot embers across the roundhouse floor. Eventually making his way out of the flames, he comes to a burned and bloodied stillness opposite Prasutagus, his breathing laboured. Cut 2.
Exterior, the great hall, previous night continuous. Finally hearing the commotion inside, Blondie and Auburn turn and run toward the great hall, Decarius hot on their heels, despite his injuries. Cut 2.
Interior, the great hall, previous night continuous. Blondie and Auburn pull back the leather door cover, drawing their weapons to find Maelo cursing in one corner, and Prasutagus steadying himself against his throne. Both are bleeding. Prasutagus is standing, Maelo cannot. The building is smouldering. Prasutagus breathlessly issues orders.
Fetch water.
The Iceni guards look to one another for a moment, then to Maelo and Decarius, standing near his father, and back to their injured king.
Go!
Obeying, the guards sheath their weapons as they turn and exit the great hall. Once they have gone, Prasutagus takes his left hand away from his lower abdomen and the wound he has been concealing. Blood pumps freely. Horrified, Decarius rushes to Prasutagus' side. As he reaches him, Prasutagus collapses into his arms. Maelo stirs and slowly climbs to his feet. He begins to cut a slow path towards Prasutagus and Decarius, leaving a bloody trail in his wake with every step. One hand, burned, blistered, and slick with blood, clasps his dagger. The other, equally bloody, hand is pressed against his own abdomen, holding together a massive open wound that pours blood down his front. Decarius stands protectively in front of Prasutagus, who is conscious but weak from his injuries.
What have you done?
Maelo grinds his teeth and stares furiously at Prasutagus. He aims the point of the blade at his king.
I will not live to be executed by Rome.
He glances at Decarius with a look that is both determinedly resolute and full of apology. Decarius shakes his head, trying in vain to reach his father's bloody hand and the dagger he holds. Swift as lightning, Maelo slits his own throat. Blood spurts across Decarius' face and person as he catches his father's body, the force of him bringing them both to the ground. Even as the blood flows from his neck and mouth, Maelo's lips work, trying to form words. Blood bubbles, but no sound comes. Decarius holds Maelo's daggered hand in his. His tears come thick and fast, falling freely on his father's body. Blondie and Auburn return, followed by a line of slaves who carry buckets and jugs of water to stem the ever-growing flames. Next, through the door, come Boudica and Jodak. They stare at the awful sight before them. Decarius looks up to meet their gaze and does not hide his tears. Around them, tribal slaves and Iceni work together against the fire. Fade 2.
Interior, the great hall mid-morning as before. Prasutagus is wrapped in his furs and remains seated, propped up on the floor near to the central hearth. He is doing his best to stay alive. Jodak is now at his side, incanting silently and reaching out to their gods and goddesses, imploring them on Prasutagus' behalf. Branwen tries to do the same, sat opposite Jodak, but her emotions continue to get the better of her. Prasutagus opens his eyes and smiles at his daughter, offering his hand. She takes it, kissing it over and over until he pulls her weakly into a warm embrace. Boudica stands over the deceased body of Maelo, which we can now see has been placed high upon a table. He is now being prepared for burial. Boudica shakes her head and looks away, her jaw clenched. Boudica's point of view. Looking around now, we can see evidence of the struggle, dried blood and charred floor and furniture. Angle off.
We should have removed his body from this place.
Maelo and I had not finished our conversation. He was my sword bearer, and will remain with me.
Prasutagus coughs and Boudica is about to respond to her husband, when Aronwyn pushes through the entrance with Merla in tow. Aronwyn goes straight to her father, but Merla pauses in the doorway, pinned under the heavy and openly hostile glare of Boudica.
We are here, father.
Merla too?
Aronwyn looks back over her shoulder, beckoning Merla with a silent nod.
As you commanded.
Merla joins Aronwyn as Prasutagus opens his eyes. Aronwyn is still nestled into his side. Prasutagus smiles and holds his hand out to Merla. Hesitantly she takes it and he pulls it into the embrace as well. She falls into him and holds him as one who has never been able to openly embrace her father.
I have too few arms to hold all my daughters.
Bronwyn comes closer, next to Branwen, and takes hold of his hand, pressing a kiss against his skin.
You must be strong in the days and the years to come. For you, all three of you, hold the future of the Iceni people in your hand.
Boudica straightens at this, clearly wishing to interject. She remains silent out of respect for her dying husband.
Merla, you are my natural daughter. Your mother gave her life so that you may live and so that I might acknowledge you as my own. It is to my eternal shame that I never fully embraced her wishes or her sacrifice, that I have been overruled by the jealousies of others. From this day, you will be acknowledged and honoured by all as the natural daughter of the king of the Iceni and sister to the future queens.
Prasutagus kisses her head, looking into her eyes. Boudica simply continues to stare at the group. Branwen smiles at Merla as Prasutagus continues to hold her face.
You have my eyes. I'm sorry that I have not been a father to you, Merla. That it has taken...
Prasutagus begins to cough, stretching painfully and grimacing. Jordak steadies him and looks pointedly at his king.
Time marches without me. Forgive me, my daughter.
Merla nods and Prasutagus kisses her head once more.
Branwen, my beautiful girl, I'm so glad I lived to see you become Flame Dreamer. I know that you will do many things. That you will become the greatest flame keeper the Iceni have ever known.
Jordak smiles at this, as Prasutagus takes the Flamekeeper's hand for a moment, before placing it on Branwen's shoulder with a nod, giving her over to his care.
You've come so far. The path is long and unknown. Jordak will guide you, as will the gods.
Tears stream over Branwen's cheeks.
I will always be with you, little raven. Look for me in the stars and in the flames. You will find me there.
Drawing in several emotionally charged breaths, Prasutagus pulls both Merla and Branwen in for a final embrace before releasing them once more. Jordak takes Branwen, standing and holding her. Merla stands on her own and moves towards Merla's body. Prasutagus holds out his hands to Aronwyn, who takes them in her own. He draws her close to him and kisses her face, his lips grazing the tracks of recent tears.
My young warrior, my fair carnage, my Aronwyn. You must lead and protect our people. They will look to you when I am gone. Be guided by your mother. Learn from her and from the great Andraste. Listen to the advice of your sisters and those others that you trust. Be fair. Be true to your name. Do Do not abandon those in need. Do not be deaf to the pleas of the weak and the infirm. And promise me that you will lead your people into a new dawn, a new day in which you may live with honor and the security of Rome at your side. Decarius knows their ways.
Aronwin stiffens.
He is not your enemy, my daughter, and you will need him in the days to come. Rome is like a tempestuous colt, but you have always had a patient and a firm hand for any mount. With good counsel, I know that you and Bramwell will deliver our people into the arms of peace and prosperity.
Aronwin nods her understanding and acceptance of this charge, but is overcome with emotion.
I will try, Father. I will try.
I know you well.
Aronwin embraces her father once more, as Catus Decianus is escorted into Great Hall. After another moment, Aronwin releases her grip on Prasutagus and moves to stand with Boudica, wiping away her tears. Decianus very quickly takes in the severity of the scene.
Prasutagus.
Catus, my thanks in coming so swiftly.
I would have been here sooner had I not been distracted with... But that is of no concern. All is not well here.
Romans, you have the knack for stating the obvious.
Laughs and immediately begins to cough again.
I wish to speak with the procurator and our flame keeper alone.
Nod and begin to exit the Great Hall. In the distance we hear Decianus trying to make light conversation.
You will have to bear with me, taking my own notes this morning. Really, it's so unlike Calamenes.
Take your time, Catus.
Boudica and Aronwin exchange a look as they step out into the mid-morning sun, which flashes as a sudden burst of light. Verse 2.
Exterior, the riverbank, after midnight the previous night. The flash of sunlight becomes moonlight and falls from the sky to see Aronwin, sat in a barren yew tree drinking ale from a crater. She is distressed and confused following the events of the evening and the past few days. She seems to be communing with someone, though there is no one else around.
That he would have the nerve to assume.
She drinks.
Only choice. My arse.
She considers, then drinks again. She stops, looking sadly at the crater. She turns it upside down. It is empty. Aronwin pushes out a sigh and launches the crater out across the river. She listens to hear it smash on the other side and gives a little cheer when it does. Aronwin begins to climb down from the yew tree, jumping to touch down on the ground. As she stands once more, she hears rustling in the tall grass and the sound of men. In her confused and drunken state, they seem to be grunting and howling. Is it Agro and the rest? Have they followed her here? She draws a dagger from the sheath behind her back and moves deeper into the swamp and longer grass. We also begin to hear the voices.
Did she go?
I didn't see. Was it definitely her?
I think so. Stay there.
Aronwin looks about, terror in her eyes, crouching low. Seemingly from nowhere, a hand reaches over to touch her on the shoulder. Reacting rather than thinking, Aronwin remains crouched low, spinning around and planting her dagger hilt deep in the belly of the newcomer. She looks up into the wide-eyed and pained expression plastered across the face of Calamenes. He holds onto the dagger and to her hand, still gripping the handle, as he staggers and falls to one knee. He struggles to speak.
Princess Aronwin.
Calamenes releases his grip on the dagger, and Aronwin pulls it free. The blood gushes from him as the light leaves his eyes. Aronwen kneels in the sludge and mud, cradling Calamenes, apologizing and trying hopelessly to rouse him. She seems to scream, yet no sound emerges from her. Unseen by Aronwen, Boudica emerges from the shadows.
What have you done?
Aronwen is now doubly horrified, shaking while the tears roll over her cheeks.
It was an accident.
A blood sacrifice to the river gods.
I didn't mean to. I didn't know it was him.
Aronwen still holds onto the dagger with which she slew Calamenes. Boudica kneels beside her daughter, taking the dagger and sheathing it away in her own belt. She wraps her arms around Aronwen, kissing the top of her head. She looks to the river where Calamenes' blood is now mixing with the water.
All will be well, I promise.
Cut to.
Exterior, beyond the Great Hall later that morning. A crowd, mainly Iceni, has formed beyond the Great Wall as rumours of Maelo's death have spread far and wide. Arvo, Fausto, Epona, and Carbo are also present. Decarius sits on a hay bale next to Sabina Lupa. Then Junius and Flaccus stand nearby, surveying the crowd. Agro, Tyro, Calticus, Tendrus and Scott also arrive. All are looking a little worse for wear this morning. Agro's eyes find Decarius in the crowd. He glares at him for a moment and begins to approach him, a question on his lips. Decarius stands painfully, his weight on one leg, ready to answer Agro. At that moment, the leather door slat to the Great Hall is opened, and Catus Decianus, papers in hands, hurries from the roundhouse. Jodak appears and waves Boudica, Merla, Branwen, and Aronwen inside once more. Agro stops in his tracks, his brow furrowing into an ugly frown as Decianus reaches Decarius and Sabina.
Sabina, I want you to go back to the roundhouse now. Pack up our things. You two, escort my wife to our lodgings and keep her safe.
Junius and Flaccus salute.
Sir.
Jesus.
Please, don't question me now, Sabina.
Is fraught, and although she has questions and concerns, she simply nods her acquiescence and turns to leave. She moves through the crowd, the legionaries making way for her when they have to do so. Another two of her slaves fall in line behind them.
I am sorry for your loss, Decarius. I know that you played no part in your father's death. Prasutagus spoke of all that happened. I have made a written copy of his account, but I fear that the words of a man cast so far in the Charian's shadow may do little to alleviate a mob, even if he was their king.
Picking up on the was in Decianus' last statement, Decarius stares at him, wide-eyed but already knowing the hopeless truth of the situation. Boudica and Prasutagus' three daughters emerged from the Great Hall. Jodak half a step behind them. The crowd falls silent. Jodak and Boudica stand with the three girls in the centre. Boudica prepares to speak. For a moment seems too choked with emotion, she looks at Jodak, who nods supportively.
Your king is dead.
Silence. Then,
Long life be granted to Queen Aronwen and Queen Branwen, the rulers of the Iceni people.
Branwen raises her head, her face an unreadable mask of shock and sorrow. Branwen tries to be brave.
Great Andraste, bless and guide our queens.
Long life be granted to Princess Merla, natural-born daughter of Prasutagus.
There is a short silence before the crowd join in their response. Agro looks suitably horrified.
Great Andraste, bless and guide the princess.
Long life be granted to Boudica, Queen Mother and Regent of the Iceni.
Great Andraste, bless and guide her, Mother of Queens.
Long life be granted to Andraste, Great Mother to all in love and war, and may she guide the spirit of our King, that he may walk in eternity at her side.
Great Andraste, bless and guide us all.
Boudica glances up to the clear skies above and notices 2 eagles circling. In the distance she hears the unmistakable cawing of a murder of crows and ravens. Far in the distance the heavens seem to rumble, but the skies are clear and blue, and even as the crowd continues to chant, Boudica closes her eyes, whispering,
I hear you, great goddess. I hear you.
Boudica looks up, watching the birds overhead once more. They are circling Icenium. We pull back and back until we survey the whole of the Iceni lands, tilting up towards the heavens as the thunder rumbles once more. Snap to black. The end.
Yay, well done everybody. Well done indeed. So, yes, that was quite an emotional one.
Yeah, I was nearly crying a couple of times.
Well done indeed, everybody. You really, wow, it was like really alive tonight. Thank you, big massive thank you to everybody for tuning in as well and continuing to listen. I think there's been some like nice comments going back and forth. So that's really nice. And if you do want to send any comments, that you can always just pop that on the Facebook page as well if you haven't had the opportunity to do it here tonight. Yeah, I just want to say a massive thank you again to everybody for turning up and really like bringing everything this evening. Wow, it was amazing. Thank you. I actually feel quite exhausted.
Yeah.
Don't know about anybody else. So yeah, I think yeah, we'll sign off for this evening. And thank you so much as well for everybody who's continued to donate to the GoFundMe for Chester Zoo and for the Welsh Mountain Zoo as well. Thank you for that and for the continued support to them. Thank you so much and good night.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
See you next week.
Bye.
Can I just say what a pleasure it was working with such a lovely, talented bunch of people on what has to be said was a really fine piece of writing, Laura.
Oh, thank you. Oh my goodness. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh, that's so lovely. I was so sad to oh, you just brought so much obviously to that with Maelo and Prasutagus in that final scene. Amy Lou.
Oh God.
I'm sorry, David.
My daughter once said, "Dad, why are you always dying?"
Once more, thank you to everybody for tuning in. Thank you so much. Take care, everybody.
Cheers.
Bye.
All the best.
There you go. I've